So I'm joined up here on the stage by Mayor Bill Peduto of the city of Pittsburgh. He's been mayor there since 2013, when he was one of this tremendous wave of very progressive mayors who were elected all across the country who were deeply concerned about inequality and issues related to that. And prior to that, for almost 2 decades, he was part of the city council, either as a staffer or as a member of the city council there. So Pittsburgh is the city that we have all long associated with steel, the steel city. And in the 21st century, it is really reinventing itself as a tech boomtown. I mean, it has these great research institutions in Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh. Increasingly, the students who are graduating there are sticking around. They're launching businesses. Now Uber wants to be in Pittsburgh because Carnegie Mellon is there. Can you tell us a little bit about the other side of that story? Sure. As all of that is happening, who are you worried may be left behind by it, and how does the city sort of watch out for those people and make sure that, you know, this tremendous opportunity doesn't also sort of exacerbate inequality?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think I have to start by saying Pittsburgh's overnight success story took 30 years. It was back in 1979. After last night, 1979 was the last time the Pirates won the World Series. The Steelers won their 4th Super Bowl, and Pittsburgh died. We died. Our entire economic heart was ripped out from us. And over the course of 30 years, a lot of sprinkling of seeds that occurred in a lot of different types of industries, and a whole new economy has emerged. So from a city that was built on steel and aluminum and iron and glass, we now are a city that has Microsoft and Intel and Google and Uber and Disney and every Bosch and Tata, companies from around the world looking to create global innovation centers within the city. And I could put this cell phone at my desk for the next 2 years, and Pittsburgh's going to progress in a way that the economy will continue to grow, except for those that are not a part of it. And those that aren't a part of it account for, within the city itself, almost 30% of the population. There's no ladder of opportunity to help them to become a part of a new economy like there was for my grandfather, who came from Italy with a 2nd grade education and was able to work in a mill and become part of the middle class. And everything that we do and what we plan in building cities has to have it baked into its DNA that inclusivity is a key component of what we're doing. Right now, that's not happening. And that's why we see this vast divide between the haves and the have-nots, between those that are having the opportunity, why we're facing affordable housing crisis in our cities throughout this country, and the accessibility to become part of the new economy. If we don't start being proactive about it, it'll only get greater.
So last month, the city released a roadmap for inclusive innovation, and a large part of it talked about digital inclusion in particular. Can you be very concrete with us about specific things that the city can do working with partners throughout the community? What's in that roadmap?
So the second part is really the critical part, because doing it by ourselves will never really be able to see a full capacity toward it. It's really the partnerships that get built out. You talked about the new mayors. It wasn't only the class of 2013, but the class of 2014, class of 2015, the mayor of San Antonio, who will be here, Libby Schaff from Oakland, California. She calls it tech equity. She combines the terms technology and equity together to talk about how we can start to put together programs. In our inclusive innovation roadmap, there's over 100 projects that we identified that talk about things like the senior centers and being able to go in and teaching our seniors how to use Skype so that they can communicate with their grandchildren, and partnering with our universities so young people are working directly with the seniors. It's on the digital data revolution and open data platforms, but not simply providing city resources, but city and county that deal with health and human health issues, and combining that with transportation routes and where kids are. We did a great program with Carnegie Mellon where we chose the neighborhood that had the most violence in the city. The neighborhood's called Homewood. It's where my grandmother was raised. And since has been, saw 70% of its people leave. And in that neighborhood, we used GIS to track where all the school children were, because we have an elementary school and a high school. And then we tracked where crime occurred. And then we created safe school routes for the kids. And we even got our fire department to become a part of it and create a walking school bus. So the kids would be on a safe route in order to be able to do it. When you talk about the combination between technology and serving the underserved or those that are not a part of it, you need to be able to create partnerships with others and be able to be bringing the service to them, not necessarily just providing free Wi-Fi.
Mm-hmm. So the city itself is also providing city services in different ways than were possible 10, 15, 20 years ago because you can now leverage all of this technology. Tell me about how you're providing services differently. I mean, what is it like in Pittsburgh today, you know, where you can apply for a permit online, where, you know, you have your, instead of, you know, interfacing with city government in a long line in a bureaucratic office, you know, those things can be transformed also.
Yeah, we're slowly progressing. I joked when we took office, we didn't even have a list of all the buildings we owned. And we wanted to do a fixed asset management system, and we didn't even have a baseline to start from. My joke has often been that we danced to an 8-track of Duran Duran. It's, so we're moving forward in creating that type of a digital presence to make it easy for people. But I think, as the last group said, if people don't have access to it, then they're automatically denied. Mm-hmm. But we also need to look into cities and try to find areas where people have been denied access through other means. And so we took a very strong approach with Code for America. We were one of the 7 cities that were a code city. And the old political machine never went away. It lives in government contracts. It's the people who raise the money for the campaigns that then get the access, that get the contracts. It's how the contracts are written so that they're large, so only a few people can bid on it. And that whole world of Tammany Hall is alive and well today in government contracting. So we took our code kids and we said, fix it. Don't just add technology, but shine light. So they created Beacon. And we were down in San Francisco launching Beacon. What Beacon does is it allows that Byzantine system of how you bid on a contract, and it breaks it down to make it as easy as adding a wide receiver to your fantasy football team. You can do it right on your phone. And let's say you're a minority-owned business that wants to hang drywall for the Pittsburgh Housing Authority, and you never had an opportunity to bid. Now you can get online, you can bid. But what's most important is when the next contract comes up, we'll send you a text, and we'll have a link, and we'll say, hey, bid again. And we'll get people into the system. And you know what's going to end up happening? Competition will lower the price, taxpayers will pay less, and everyone will benefit. Mm-hmm. Those are the types of ways that technology can break down the barriers, where it still will be a detriment, or where we still have the challenge, is where we have in the city of Pittsburgh 15% of our households that don't have access to the internet. Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of times when we talk about the digital divide, we're very focused on who has a computer in their home and who has Wi-Fi, when in fact it's the smartphone that is really sort of providing access to a lot of people and that is fundamentally changing quality of life for people. So how do you think about not, you know, who has a computer at home, but who has a smartphone, who can afford a data plan?
You know, that's definitely going to be a big part of it, and making sure that accessibility and affordability are both parts. You know, we've started to create a mesh net that's a public-owned system where the cost is free. And in certain neighborhoods where young entrepreneurs have gotten together with tech kids out of Carnegie Mellon and the University of Pittsburgh, they've created their own system. What's interesting is when Hurricane Sandy hit, it was the only system that was operating in New York. So it's not only a system I think that we need to look at and to be able to invest in, but at the same time it could also be a critical part of public safety strategy in building resilient cities. There was another part to it that I just lost. I'm still going over that horrible game last night. I know Rom's going to be here, and I'm going to have to congratulate him, and it's going to be really rough. But it's a we're like at the, I'll use a football analogy. I'll get out of baseball. We're like the 10-yard line, and there's the rest of the field ahead of us of how technology is going to transform cities. Streetlights aren't streetlights anymore. Streetlights have 7 pins that can be sensors, they could be cellular, you could rent to cellular companies and make money off your streetlights. They could be Wi-Fi, you could create the mesh net. They could be shot spotters in order to hear gun detection, where the lights will turn up in that area and immediately on the radio to that police car, where the cameras will do plate detection. The streetlights are, in the next 2 years, are going to be anything but a streetlight. They're going to be this. This is going to be on top of your streets all throughout. You'll be able to do light equity studies to determine which neighborhoods have more light, which neighborhoods have less light, be able to do it in a proactive way to address public safety. And all that data that's going to be collected, because sensor prices are going down so much, are going to be able to be brought together and then changed in ways that we're not even imagining on cross-tabulations in order to be able to provide services across the 3 E's even better. More efficient, more effective, and more equitable. So when I think about what's going to happen in the next few years, I'm not looking at government IT departments. We created an MOU with Carnegie Mellon University, the first of its kind in the country, a government and a university partnering. What does that mean? That means I now have a research and development department. So if I want to create the opportunity to find out when that snow plow is going down the street, is the plow down or up, and is the salt spreader turning or not? Because how many times I get that call, that plow didn't have its plow down when it came down my street. I have no way of knowing. I don't have to put it out for a bid to companies. I can ask my R&D department at Carnegie Mellon University to do it for me. And the foundation community is behind it to help to fund it. What does Carnegie Mellon get? It now has an urban lab called the City of Pittsburgh to take product and testing and research and create it into companies that will be a part of Pittsburgh. So where we're at right now is at the very beginning of a transformation of how city government will operate. And then I go back to what I said before. If we don't bake into the DNA inclusivity at this point, we're going to end up with a very divided cities, more so than we even see today.
Mm-hmm. Could we take a question if we have one?
We have a question that came in through Twitter, and that is for the mayor. With all these advancements, who may be left behind in the tech innovation in Pittsburgh, and how do you get them up to speed?
Oh, it's, the audiences, I think, were even mentioned in the previous panels. The elderly, the lower educated, and low income. And you can basically measure that pretty easily. I don't think we have the answers yet on how you get them up to speed. I think that a lot of the opportunities for accessibility start to address the issue, but they don't fully address it. And it's not just by providing free Wi-Fi or computer labs and rec centers or the ability to even train seniors. We have a company from London that's both a software and a hardware company called Breezy. And what Breezy does is it creates not an iPad, it's a Samsung's, whatever it's called.
Tablet.
Tablet, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Again, still thinking about you last night. And it makes it so that a senior can do it and use it. And it doesn't have the way that we look at it, but it's just big buttons. Facebook, Skype, Twitter, whatever it is, but it's personalized to the individual. You say what it is that you want to do, and they make it, they send it to you, and then they help you. Breezy's is going to set up its North American headquarters in Pittsburgh, and it's partly because of the stuff that we're doing and partly because they just like Pittsburgh. And that type of tie-in, of creating the market to the need, I think we're going to see a lot more of in the next couple of years. Mm-hmm. And I think that will help more than what we can do as a government.
Mm-hmm. Lois, do we have another question?
Yeah, one more. Pittsburgh has a long history of leveraging public media as an educational tool. How should other cities utilize public media to support digital access and related learning opportunities?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys know, Pittsburgh is the home to both Andy Warhol and Mr. Rogers. And to kind of take pride in both and in the way that they both have been able to utilize pop media and media to be able to get messaging out. All cities have cable TV stations, and you know, they were talking before about are seniors left out of the civic discussion when it comes to races, campaigns? Somewhat, but your message differs based upon your mode or your media source. So what you're putting out as in a campaign on Twitter is very different than what you're doing on your TV ads during the 6 o'clock news. And you'll be hard pressed not to see the presidential candidates talking about Social Security and Medicare. But on Twitter, they're probably talking about affordable education and environmental issues. So you speak to your audience where it is. I think that it's the same means in trying to be able to address the communities that are left out. You have to talk to them where they are listening and into a message that resonates at that point. There's no silver bullet. There's not one message that is able to address this. It's just, again, a partnership between social service agencies, foundations, corporations, and government to be able to lessen the divide as we go through this amazing transformation that's going to occur in cities throughout the world.
So it's your job as mayor to worry about a lot of things, you know, to be thinking about crime, the city's debt obligations, pensions.
Right-handed pitchers.
Right-handed pitchers. You're thinking about climate change in Pittsburgh. Where do these issues that we've been talking about fit into all of that as far as your priorities and the city's priorities? And, you know, to what extent is what we're talking about even connected to a lot of those other things?
Well, if you asked mayors about 5 years ago to define technology in city government, they would say that they have an IT department that is able to address when the email server goes down within 48 hours and getting it back. And now every city has a department of innovation and performance or a department of new metrics. You have data analysts that are a part of senior staffing, chief resiliency officers. And you have all of these different components that sort of say, we know where the world's going. We understand that what's being discussed in Bilbao is being discussed in Bogota and being discussed in Boulder, Colorado. And we have the ability to learn from each other and to be able to create these great ways of providing the basic services more efficiently and effectively. But the key of the technology side of it, and it goes back to the cities like Cleveland and Detroit and Pittsburgh that built the middle class. It was a fight to be able to get there. Cities have to be partners in adding that third E of equity to be a true component of it. And that's really where your IT department has gone. So when we took office, we created a new Department of Innovation and Performance, had a great consultant from Arup, who was a consultant to see 40 cities around the world, and she lived in Hong Kong, London, and New York, and she wanted to come home to Pittsburgh to be able to actually get things done. So she's the head of IMP. And then we created a new Bureau of Neighborhood Empowerment that focuses solely in the neighborhoods that have been left behind. And for the first year and a half, both of them ran on 2 tracks. And today, those tracks are starting to merge. And when innovation and performance and neighborhood empowerment get to a point where their missions are the same, then you know a city is succeeding.